Welcome back. We're here with Tobias, who is a men's embodiment coach. Tobias, how are you?
Really good, brother. Really good, man.
Yes,
Thanks for having me
it's
on.
great. Of course, dude. It's really good to have you on. I know we would do some of these phone, calls and we would record it back in the day. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just happy to, be able to have you on, man. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, it's cool, right? It's like we connected quite early on in the whole online journey, for me at least, and
Yeah,
we're having conversations. So yeah, I love how it's developed for you, brother. It's good to be
of
here.
course. Thank you, man. Of course. So you really started to focus on the men's embodiment coaching about a year ago. Why did you decide to get into this?
It's funny. This will sound like do you know what? I don't care how it sounds. It didn't. I didn't really decide. It was decided for me. Truthfully, it just kind of fell into me. A little bit like coaching, which really I don't really like thinking of myself as a coach, more a guide or facilitator. But it's a label that's useful, right? But yeah, it called me, to be honest. I fell into this whole thing during COVID after a very deep, dark night of the soul, rapid awakening, realization that the world is not what it seems. And without getting into that whole story, within a year, I was, guiding and coaching and helping other people. But it was mostly with women, not by choice. Just that was kind of where my energy was attracting in. A lot of kind of emotional trauma healing for women. And then about 15, 16 months ago, I went to Bali for 4 months and was, part of some communities out there and did some workshops, some talks, met some people, and really connected with started connecting with some really powerful men. And a couple of them were like, "We want to hire you. We can learn something from you. We want to go deep with you." And it was like, this is awesome, but it was also really triggering because at the time I was like, I coach women, right? Men don't really get this whole emotional softening kind of, let go of the hustle, which is really the other side to embodiment is liberation, right? Like surrender, letting go. But yeah, it's like I knew in that moment something said this is what you're really here for. This is you're here to work with the brothers and help bring what I had been cultivating and learning, which I'm sure we'll get into, to men specifically. And one of the things I practiced and that I teach and share is when you get a calling, leap. You don't ask
Yes.
why, just jump all in. So yeah, the next day I canceled my community, my membership. I told my female clients, this is it. We're in our last couple of weeks together. I don't know what this is, but I've got to do this, and just went all in. And yeah, the last year and a bit has been an initiation into it, really, into working with brothers.
Yeah. Well, when the universe calls, right, you have to take that call. And why do you
Yeah.
or can you talk about the hero's journey and why you think it's so important?
Well, it's everything, right? Like the hero's journey is the archetypal death and rebirth journey that we're just playing out. It's like it's birth. We what is the first journey we ever go on? We're held in our mum's womb. We have a 9 month life that which people forget about. That's our first life, well, in the physical form here. And then we die. We're pushed through this tube, this dark night of the soul, where everything's dying around us, and we're squeezed out into this new life, right? Like that's the original trauma. That is the hero's journey. So we're replaying this out constantly. It's coded into our psyche, as Carl Jung puts it, like into our unconscious or collective consciousness. Um, and it's the wheel of time, which I've been reading those books recently. It's the wheel of time that we're constantly playing out. Like you're dying to one identity of yourself to be reborn into a newer, different, fuller expression of your being. It's everything, the hero's journey.
Yeah, and I think As you talked about, it's kind of just like the cycle of life. And as we continue to get older, we just continue to kind of go through that cycle or that cycle in micro, kind of cycles.
Yeah.
And you also talked about diving inward
Hmm.
before you go outward. Do you think someone can work on their self internally at the same time as wanting to strive for material success?
You absolutely can. We can do anything. What I would say is yes. To give a short answer, yes, absolutely. And I think that it can be a very healthy and useful thing to do. In my last sort of, I mean, I'm coming out, or I'm at the start of a new chapter of my journey, right? So I kind of completed one cycle of my hero's journey. I went through, really a deeper initiation recently. And I wasn't given a choice. It got to the point where I'd built this online business. I had been doing the inner work while striving outwardly. But eventually, like the universe just took everything away. It took my business away. It took all the money I had made away. It took everything away and just stuck me at home in my parents' place, where I had no imagined being at 27 with no money, nothing. And it said, you are going to have nowhere to go but inwards, right? And that wasn't my choice, but it was what I needed for my soul's growth at that moment. Um, Now, I'm glad that happened, but I wouldn't have chosen it, right? And so um, the kind of that was my situation. Others have something similar, but what I would say is life will always give you what you need. So if you're in a place where you're like, yeah, I'm learning, I'm going inwards, but it's not consuming you, you're not being put in a situation where you have no choice, then go out and strive by all means, go and create, like we're creators. We're not just here to heal, but there might come a point where you have no choice. And that's when you've got to be willing to just really surrender, right? And discover who you are without any outside distraction, without any fluffs and baubles or pretty trinkets to chase after. And that's when you really
Yeah,
find out who
yeah,
you
and I
are.
for sure, and I think it's interesting that you touched on that because I think a lot of times we have this grand plan of what we think we want life to be like, and
Mm,
then the things, either if you want to call it God, the universe, source, they will present us opportunities and outcomes that were better than what we actually thought was going to be, the final
yeah,
destination or our grand plan of what life's going to look like. And it's very interesting how as humans we try to map out everything in our head, even though we know
yeah.
that's not possible. um
Yeah, yeah,
i
yeah. And
i
this is something that I was forced to face in myself, and it's part of what I do with brothers. Is like helping you see that your greatest plan is 99% just your ego's solution to the traumas that you don't want to face. A lot of the things that we create, we're trying to create because deep down, we don't feel worthy, we don't feel good enough, we were abandoned, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's also important to acknowledge that God has a much bigger plan for us, right? And what we're really here to do is to remember and embody the truth of what we are. So yeah, let's create our let's go for our dreams, but let's also be willing to let them go because something so much better and truer is yeah on the other side of that when we surrender.
absolutely. And how does someone detach from the outcome of their actions and letting go while also holding themselves accountable and having
Mm.
standards?
Yeah, this is the golden question. And if you've come up with the magic bullet answer, let me know. What I would say first of all is like we got to embrace being human. We came here to forget. We came here to not know. While at the same time, anyone who's gone any length of time or any depth in their spiritual path will know there's a part of us that knows we're infinite, that knows we are, you know, God's son, the son of God, a divine being. We know that deep down, but we came here to forget that and to stumble and to go through the labyrinth. And, we forget that like a labyrinth, there's only one path. You're going to get to the destination anyway. But the joy of the labyrinth is that it feels like you're in a maze. So it's scary. It's like Alan Watts said. You might think, am I going to make it? Am I not going to make it? It's part of what we're here for. So embracing that you're going to mess it up is really important. But if we're talking about men specifically, and really it applies for everybody, it applies for women as well. I would say aligning with your core, getting to know what's your deepest truth. And that's not a one-time thing. It's something that we have to ask ourselves again and again. But it's like, what are my desires, my earthly desires, that tapping into the feminine part of us, and honoring those needs, honoring those things that we want to create. But then deeper than that, like, who am I really? Like, what am I here to take a stand for? What are my values? And when we have that clarity, then we know that we can kind of live in alignment with that each day. And then the external stuff can just become, kind of like a byproduct, yes, but also art. That's the way I like to look at it. It's like, hey, instead of I need to get to this point. This is what I had before. When I get to a 20K month in my business, then everything's going to fall into place and it's going to be great. I got that and I sabotaged it because I was creating it from ego, from a part of me that didn't feel good enough or worthy, right? And so when I descended and went inwards, and as we do that and get clearer, actually, again, who am I? What are my values? What do I stand for? That's what matters. That's where the focus goes. Then we can go out, and now I'm like, yeah, I'd like to get to 20K a month in my business, but I'm no longer attaching my sense of self to it. That's when it becomes a creation. That's when it becomes a game. That's when it becomes a dance, and we're creating from inspiration, as I put it, which is if we break that word down, in spirit action. So you're inwardly in your spirit and you're feeling inspired to take action and give from a connection with who you are. That's the really important thing. Whereas if you're doing it the way most of us do it and are taught to do it, because of self-help and personal growth and the hustle and grind world, which serves a purpose, but it will only take us so far, where we're outwardly looking and we're thinking, when I get that, then I'm going to feel fulfilled. When I reach that milestone, then I'm going to be successful, right? But you're coming from a foundation of, I'm not already that, which one, isn't true, and two, means you're going to end up creating, because we always create what our identity says we are. You're going to end up creating the opposite of what you're really looking for. So a bit of a long answer, but if I summarize it, it's like, bring the focus within and use that to create outwardly rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and I think taking that approach, I think it's important to kind of work on yourself along the journey, because you see these very successful people get to the top and they expected to be happy and they expected all these things, and then they go down the path of either sex, drugs, and they get all of this money, but they sacrificed their life, and now
Yeah.
they're trying to use the money to get their life back. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's that cycle that we're taught. And
Yeah.
you've obviously been through a lot in the past. Like you've mentioned, you've learned from your personal experiences and a lot of lessons. When you take these lessons you've learned from overcoming your struggles and you use them to impact men and change their lives, how does that make you feel?
Connected is, I think, the strongest word. It's what it really comes down to is service. For me, I believe that's probably another thing we could add to your previous question, right? It's like how to create without losing yourself in it, is to realize that, we're here to be of service. And connection and service go hand in hand, because when you realize you're not separate, when you realize you are an integral part of the whole of nature, of the brotherhood, of the sisterhood, of the human race and beyond, then you realize that you're going to be taken care of, and that actually um, it's okay. And you can then give what you have, to serve those around you, and it fuels a deeper sense of connection. And I think deep down, that's really what we're looking for, right? Like, the deep spiritual truth is what really drives us is the illusion of separation from love, from God, from source. And so the more we're connected to that deep truth, the more alive, whole, and radiant we feel. And so, yeah, when I see now the impact of the challenges and the shit that I've been through, it's very connecting. And yeah, it's more of a peaceful joy, right? It's not like this, oh yeah, I'm making it right. It's just this kind of like, yeah, this is what it was about.
And as humans, do you think we are meant to fully feel and realize that we're not separate, or do you think that is just part of the journey of being human, is that we'll never fully know what it feels like to be
Mm,
connected because we need labels and we need an ego to a point?
mm. I'm really practicing these days, tuning into what I feel and what's true for me, rather than just regurgitating
Yeah.
what I've heard others say, because I'm very into like esoteric wisdom and sort of higher density beings talking about like, the law of one and stuff. And I'm open to all of that. But like, what I feel in this moment is, again, it comes back to like, we came here to forget and remember, because I don't think we're just locked in this endless, well, that's it now, I'm human and I've forgotten. I
Yeah.
think there is a path, there is a spiritual process, there is an ascension that we are on. um but I feel, I truly feel, knowing that it's more like a roller coaster ride than, a death maze, i.e., you're going to get to the destination one way or another, because it's what we came from. So don't try so hard, right? It's like saying, how are you meant to ride the roller coaster? You just ride the roller coaster. You can put your arms up in the air and scream, or you can fight it and hate every second of it. It will change your experience of the journey, but you're free to choose that. And I think that's what free will really is. It's like, how do you choose to walk the path?
Interesting. That's a unique answer. I think going through life, and I really like what you said about free will, because I've never thought about it that way. Of like, most people think free will is, at least my perspective on it, partially is like free will is you either get to choose the life you live or you don't get to choose the life, but you're presenting a new option of, we necessarily don't get to choose our path, but we get to choose how we experience our path that we walk on.
Yes. And let's say this is, let's call it more the direction, right? The direction, we're all headed in the same direction,
Yeah.
but we can take a more winding road. We can take a direct path. We can go the hard route and go and meditate in an ashram and just like connect with source and all of that. Or you can take a more embodied earthly route, and really be of the earth. Like, there's so many ways to remember who we are, and to ascend spiritually in consciousness. And then there's also ways to walk that path that you choose as well, but the direction's the same. And one of the ways I had free will described to me by one of my teachers was, he's like, think of it more as free won't. We all came here, and this is part of the work that I do, is we all came here with a unique soul blueprint, something coded into our heart space that we're here to bring and realize. We can think of that as our destiny. And free will is more like free won't. You can choose not to follow that and go on your egos or like a meandering path, or you can choose to follow those callings. And that's much more of a kind of set path.
I'm getting a new perspective today. This is great. I have
Mm.
2 more questions for you, Tobias.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think humans need something
Awesome.
to worship to find true fulfillment in life?
Yes, if we take it from the perspective that the human, i.e., that part of us which is more animalistic and primal, we need, in some sense, to worship the divine to feel a connection to it, you know? And it's through that worship that we remember we're one with it. That's what creates the Trinity, you know, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, or the Mother, the Father, the Son, as I talk about it, like the body, the mind, and the soul, the spirit. The worship and the faith is kind of what keeps it together. So yes, I do, but you could also argue not as well, right, with all these things.
No, 100%. I just love to get people's perspective about those deeper spiritual things, because
Mm,
I think we all think of it, right? Like everyone, if it's you laying in your bed by yourself at night, or if it's you making content about it, I think we all have that aspect of us
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
wonders and that,
yeah.
thinks about those things.
Yeah, and I love that question, because what I can say for myself is, since because New Age spirituality can often, it likes to talk about this idea that you are God, and I'm a big proponent of this, that that we are. But as Jesus said in the Bible, right, and the Bible is a book of esoteric wisdom, even if it is very flawed as well. I and my Father are one, but my Father is greater than I. So it's those kind of paradoxical truth that, yeah, we're one, but also the divine is so much greater than our human self. It's like a funnel. So worship is an act of devotion and surrender, which is really how we become empowered, because it's like, oh, I don't need to control my life anymore, because something greater than me, which is also me as well. It's not like defaulting to an external authority, but it's a surrender to the flow. And I think worship is really important for that.
Yeah, very interesting. I have a lot of thoughts going through my head. So it's
Do you want to share?
this
I
is
don't know how long you usually do these for, so I'm always
no,
up
I
for.
mean, I guess the one thing I was thinking is I heard someone say it. His name's Embodiment Celestial. He makes content on TikTok, and he described it. And instantly, what I thought of when you were describing it is, we are one big ocean, and if you take a cup and you would grab water out of the ocean, the cup would be the body, the water in the cup would be the soul, and the ocean would be like source.
Mm, mm.
What's your opinion on that? I would love to get your opinion on that.
The cup would be the body, the water would be the soul. Yeah, I mean, that I love that analogy. That feels very aligned for me. I think that the flaw with the analogy a little bit is only if you take the cup out of the ocean, because it's like you can't actually take the cup out of the ocean, because the
Yeah,
ocean's
yeah,
all that
yeah.
there is, right? So
No,
yeah.
for sure. For sure. Well, I love that. Yeah, that was something I was thinking of. I have one more question for you. If you
Right.
could have dinner with 2 people, one person from the past and one person from the present, who would it be and why?
Oh, I love these questions, because it's very telling for where you're at, right? And so I don't know what
Yes.
my answer is going to be, but I'm curious what. So one from the past, one from the present. We'll
Yes.
go for the past first. I'm going to pick Napoleon, which you
Okay.
might not expect, but I grew up. I'd studied history. I was very into the Napoleonic Wars, and I've always found him a really fascinating figure, because he represents one of those great men of history who was also a tyrant, but who figured out how to insert his will into the universe and kind of have things, create things basically. He had a God complex. And he was also another example of one of those people that kind of broke universal law by hurting others in the process, which is why he was torn down. So I think he's a fascinating figure. I'd love to meet Napoleon. And on that note, I'm absolutely traumatized by the the Hollywood film that just absolutely ruined him. But we won't talk about that. So Napoleon, because that would just be interesting. In the present, wow, picking one person. What does my heart say? I would go with my guy Michael Singer. No, do you know what? I'm going to choose Eckhart Tolle. I'll choose Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle was the teacher who didn't trigger, but was a lot of the catalyst for my awakening. The Power of Now was the first kind of self-help spirituality book I came across, and it sparked a lot for me. So yeah, I'll pick Eckhart Tolle and Napoleon. That sounds like a fascinating dinner.
Yes. Yes, those are 2 new ones, and I love it, and I think,
Yeah.
great conversations will be had, but that's all the questions I have, Tobias. How can people find you, and what is one thing you wanna leave people with?
Well, you can find me at the moment. I'm going through an incubation of kind of where I take my business and brand from here. But I will be sharing again on social media. So the best place for that would be Instagram @_ Tobias Matthew. I do have a TikTok as well, which I don't massively use, but it's @Tobias Matthew as well. What was the second question, please?
What is one thing you wanna leave people with?
One thing I want to leave people with. Seeing as we've not spoken about it too much, I want to leave this nudge of embodiment. That there's a difference between intellectually understanding something or connecting spiritually with the divine and embodying it. And our real work lies in not just going up to these high states or visualizing and imagining and feeling stuff. It's like, how do I bring that down into my roots, into my body, and bring that into the earth? That's our challenge. That's our calling. That's our mission right now. And embodiment is the piece that, particularly for men, a lot of us are missing it. I certainly was. So yeah, embody.
Beautiful.
That's the key.
Tobias, it was a great conversation, man, and I just kinda let it flow, and I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience, so thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for doing what you're doing. It's good to be
Of
here.
course. Thank you.